Hello everybody, my name is Bobby Rowland. Today we're going to be talking about runway incursion avoidance. Our goal today is that you, the pilot, understand the importance of runway incursion avoidance, you understand the importance of situational awareness, the challenges of taxi operations, proper techniques to avoid runway incursions, the challenges of non-towered taxi operations, and challenges of taxiing during night and low visibility conditions. So what is a runway incursion? A runway incursion happens when an aircraft and other ground equipment create a collision hazard with an aircraft taking off, landing, or intending to land. How do we reduce the potential for runway incursions? We use proper planning, clear communication, and enhanced situational awareness. By using proper planning, we use our NW craft checklist. That's a really good place to start with planning. So that's our NOTAMs, weather, known ATC delays, runways, alternates, fuel, and takeoff and landing distances. By properly preparing our NW craft checklist for every flight, we're able to prepare for our runways, our takeoff distances, so we can avoid runway incursions, and we're also preparing for any runway closures through our NOTAMs. Next is clear communication. By being able to communicate properly and learning proper communication techniques in the air, you are able to enhance your own situational awareness and enhance the situational awareness of other pilots. The biggest thing to remember when communicating is if you're unsure, if you get confused, if you get distracted, disoriented, or lost, stop what you're doing, figure out what you're doing. That goes for non-towered and towered airports. Next, let's talk about enhanced situational awareness. It's important that you, the pilot, understand all the tools that you have available to you and you use all of them. All the tools include stuff like your EFB. It includes your ADSB. It includes using your safety pilots or even your passengers. Remember, when we're preparing passengers for flight, we tell them, see something, say something. It's also important that we reduce our distractions while we're flying. Distractions can lead to mistakes or disorientation. That's why we follow sterile cockpit when we're taxiing, taking off, landing, and on approach. Next is pre-flight. Pre-flight, before every flight, we check our NOTAMs. That goes back to our NW craft. We check our NOTAMs to see if there's any runway closures, and we check our NOTAMs to see if there's any taxiway closures. That might give us taxi instructions that we're not familiar with. Next is weather. We check our weather before every flight. We want to know what our airport environment is going to be like. So is it going to be a low visibility day? Or if it had just rained, is our runway slippery? Do we need to extend our takeoff and landing distances? Next, we review our airport diagram. We want to review our airport diagram for our home airport, as well as any airports we're planning on stopping at throughout our flight. We want to review our expected taxi route, our expected runway, and any hotspots we might run into on our airport. We'll review hotspots when we take a look at an airport diagram on the next slide. Next is environmental. We want to review the environment in which we're going to be flying. So that means we're reviewing, are we at a towered or non-towered airport? Going back to weather, is it going to be a poor weather day or a good weather day? Is it busy or is it not busy? We're reviewing our environment so we're able to have the best possible preparation. And next we do our takeoff and landing distances. We want to review our takeoff and landing distances to make sure we can use the runways that we're planning on using without causing a runway incursion. Next, let's talk about taxiing at a towered airport. Taxiing at a towered airport, the name of the game is situational awareness. If you have good situational awareness, taxiing at a towered airport will be a breeze. Let's pull up a towered airport diagram. Today we're going to be using Flying Cloud, Minnesota as our example. So you can find your airport diagrams in your chart supplements. You want to make sure that your airport diagram is current, and this will give you all the taxiway information and runway information for your airport. First thing I want to highlight is our runways. So our runways will be the solid black labeled with the runway identifier at each end. So in this case here we have 3618, 28 right, 28 left, and 10 right and 10 left. Next thing I want to point out is our hotspots. We talked about that on the last slide. Hotspots are these orange boxes, and they're easy to find because they're the only thing in color. The hotspots highlight areas where you need to use extra caution when taxiing. They're usually spots where runway incursions have happened in the past or taxi accidents have happened in the past. So you want to review these before your flight to make sure if you are going through a hotspot, you're well prepared for it. Next thing I want to highlight is our movement and non-movement areas. So our non-movement areas are our areas shaded in gray here with the dark stripes through it. The non-movement areas are areas like our FBO ramps. These are areas not controlled by ATC. That's the opposite of our movement areas, which are controlled by ATC. We'll talk about where that boundary begins when we talk about airport signage. Next is confirmation bias. This is especially common during flight training. The reason it's common during flight training is because when you're flight training, you're usually training out of the same airport. And if you're training at a towered airport, you're most likely going to hear the same instructions repeated multiple times. So it's easy to get used to something. It's important to prepare yourself for all possible taxi instructions. We do this by writing down our taxi instructions every time we get it. Next is monitoring ATC. While you're taxiing at a towered airport, you have to monitor the proper ATC frequency. This is because they might give you a change of instructions. They might tell you to stop, and if you don't stop when they tell you to stop, you could get a pilot deviation. Next is parallel runways. This goes for towered and non-towered airports, but parallel runways are more common at towered airports. Parallel runways present a unique challenge because these are runways that face the same direction, so it's easy to get confused. How do we avoid making mistakes around parallel runways? We do this by verifying that we are at the correct runway, and we do this also by having our airport diagram up while we're taxiing to make sure that we don't accidentally cross a parallel runway while we're taxiing. Next is crossing runways. When we cross a runway, we want to make sure we look left, we look right, and we make sure there's no landing traffic and that we have clearance from the controller. If we cross a runway when we're not supposed to, that is a runway incursion. Next is entering runways. Similar to crossing runways, when we enter a runway, we want to look left, look right, make sure that there's no landing or departing traffic, make sure we have clearance to enter that runway from air traffic control. And then once we get onto that runway, we want to verify that this is the runway we have gotten clearance to take off or land from. Next thing we want to talk about is runway incursions after landing. You might think, how would I get a runway incursion after landing? Take a look at our airport diagram for flying cloud. Let's say you're cleared to land down here at the south runway, runway 36. You land, you go all the way down, you get off and you turn right onto 2A right. Well, if you turn right onto that runway is not a taxiway. That is a runway. And so if you turn on that and they're using that runway, that could be a runway incursion. Let's talk about some airport symbols. So we talked about how do we distinguish a movement from a non-movement area. We do this with our non-movement area boundary lines here. So that's a solid yellow line with a dashed yellow line on top. This delineates a movement area under control of ATC from a non-movement area. So you want to be aware of these. Make sure you don't cross that solid line without ATC permission. Next is our runway hold position. Our runway hold position is similar to our non-movement area boundary signs, except it's got 2 solid yellow lines and 2 dotted yellow lines. This denotes an entrance to a runway from a taxiway. If you're on the side of the solid yellow lines, you need permission to cross that line. If you're on the side of the dashed yellow lines, you may cross that as soon as possible. Next, let's talk about our runway signs. So our runway signs are going to be red with white lettering in the middle. So as you can see here, we have 422 or 268. These 9 times out of 10 will identify areas critical to a runway, or they're areas critical to airport operations, like a no entry sign. Next are our black signs here. Our black signs here are going to be black with yellow lettering in the middle with a yellow border here. These signs are where you are at that moment. These yellow signs with black lettering are direction signs. So take a look at this one right here. We have a black arrow and the letter K. This means taxiway Kilo is to the left. If you're headed towards a runway, you see this 22 with an arrow straight in front of you. That means runway 22 is straight ahead. You want to verify these signs while taxiing to make sure you're going where you're supposed to be going. As you can see, there's a lot more signs that we won't be covering here today. Make sure you go through all these signs with your instructor. Next is non-towered airports. Non-towered airports present their own unique set of challenges. The biggest one being communication. Communication is not always required at non-towered airports. It's super important at non-towered airports that you follow proper radio procedures. So that means making your 10-mile approach call, your 5-mile approach call, 3-mile approach call, and calling all parts of the pattern, as well as making radio calls about your taxi intention. At non-towered airports, we need to have the best possible situational awareness. That means using our ADS-B when we can. but it also means having a really strong visual scan so we can see what other planes are doing. Remember, again, if you're flying with another person, make sure you tell them, hey, I want you looking out for traffic. Here's an example of a non-towered airport. You can find this in the airport supplement. For today's example, we're using New Ulm Municipal Airport in southwestern Minnesota. You can find all the runway information here. So they have 4 runways, runway 15, runway 33, runway 04, and runway 22. One of the runways is a turf runway. This will help us prepare for our environment. So if we're landing on this turf runway, we need to know, okay, we're doing a soft field landing on this. Next is night operations while taxiing. Taxiing at night is a lot harder than taxiing during the day because you don't have the visual references that you do during the day. At night, you're using your night vision instead of your day vision, meaning that staring at things directly might not always give you the best line of sight. We want to use our peripheral vision at night. At night, airports use lighting. When you're taxiing, taxiways will be marked with blue lighting and runways will have white lighting. There is a ton more lights that an airport can have, more than just white and blue. As we can see by this picture right here, we got some red at the end. It's super important that you go through with your instructor and you talk about all the different types of lighting systems that you could encounter at night. At night, extra vigilance is required because everything happens quicker. One thing to know at night, at non-towered airports in particular, the lights at the airport might not always be turned on. So you need to know what 3 clicks means, what 5 clicks means, and what 7 clicks means. You have to click those on the CTAF frequency either 3 times, 5 times, or 7 times, and that will turn on the lights, either to a low, medium, or high intensity light. Next is low visibility. In order to avoid runway incursions during low visibility, we want you to take it slow. Low visibility, like at nighttime, you don't have your visual references that you would during regular visibility. Use all your tools at your disposal, so use your ADS-B, your chart supplements, your safety pilots. Low visibility taxiing presents extra challenges at non-towered airports because, again, you're not required to do communication. When taxiing during low visibility at non-towered airports, use extra caution. Take it extra slow. Alright, that's all we have here today for runway incursion avoidance. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, please leave a comment down below. I hope you all have a great day.